to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk. Number 379.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the second of the Wild Camp Bivvy Bag Challenge, November 2014. You're listening to the Outdoor Station, and I'm Bob Cartwright, and I am, as I say, on a 12-month challenge, one a month, wild camping, slowly getting more and more adventurous as time goes by. Started in October and had the first night on North Hill in Malvern, and this second trip still sort of slightly working further and further away from home. I'm now on the Worcestershire Way, heading north out of Malvern, currently heading towards what I aim to be a wild camp night. However, as I've just been speaking to you, the track that I've been walking along, which I'll describe in a second, which is mainly clay, and very muddy clay at that, has just presented me with a very large tree across my path. So I'm going to have to stop this now, having just started, and negotiate that and pick up in a second. Right, that's that negotiated. Of course, I'm kicking myself really, because I've been paying more attention to the map, which I wasn't because of over-familiarity. I wouldn't have come down this steep slope on the Suckley Hills, where I am at the moment, and realised I'd made a mistake, only to either renegotiate and go back up, or take this Land Rover track, give or take. So a very positive description of it. This muddy clay track, which I'm taking to rejoin where the Worcestershire Way should be. So let me explain the situation, and you can share the journey with me. As I say, it's November, and people may remember when they hear this that November suddenly brought in some pretty wet weather after a very, very long and pleasant summer. And so consequently, underfoot, this particular path, the Worcestershire Way, like most trails and paths, which are sort of semi-domestic in some respects, not particularly wild, have turned into a bit of a quagmire. You can probably hear the way I'm sloshing and sliding at the moment. The weather today has, like my previous wild camp actually, been ridiculously mild. It started off very misty this morning. Started off in Malvern when it was dark, and headed north following the Worcestershire Way round up Nova and round North Hill on the Malvern Hills, then along down through the paths and curtilages of the town and houses, up the edge of fields, consequently all areas really where people generally walk their dogs. So as you can imagine, as you can probably hear as I squelch my way through, a lot of the path has been turned into a little bit of a mess. So underfoot the going is what could be politely called wet. The leaves have been shed from the trees. The ground is scattered in a carpet of brown really, and that sort of dark black manky colour that the leaves go after they've been there for a while. So all along the footpath you've got shades of orange and brown as the fresh leaves that have fallen lay on top of the ones that have been there for a few days. So what was my route? Where was I got to? North Hill. Then we went down off North Hill and up and over the back of Birchwood Lodge, which incidentally I didn't know until I looked in the guidebook the other day, is where apparently Elgar wrote The Dream of Gerontius, if you're an Elgar fan. I was fairly familiar with most places he lived in, but I wasn't aware of that one, so let's have a few bars from The Dream of Gerontius just to get us in the mood. So after Birchwood, the path drops down into Alfric and Suckley, and out of Suckley it heads back up into the Suckley Hills, which is where you find me now. So it's been a fair day's walking. The weather has stayed mild. I started off in mist and cloud this morning, and really, to be honest, the sky hasn't changed colour. It's still that sort of ominous grey that is neither going to turn pleasant or unpleasant. However, I've just checked my watch and it's 3 o'clock, and of course the whole purpose about this exercise is to go somewhere interesting and wild camp. Now, my target when I set off this morning was the Talbot Hotel at Nightwick, which is I think it's 11th century coaching inn, and although that's pretty well halfway of the Worcestershire Way, and a good obviously point to refresh one's soul with some food and liquid refreshment, the wild camping opportunities around there are not particularly prosperous. It's probably a mile or so after the end of the Suckley Hills here. It's like a mile or so on the road, which goes down to Nightwick and the Talbot Hotel, and then the path goes steeply up the Ankerdine Hill and zigzags its way around various properties that are up there, but it's very, very steep and not really conducive to wild camping. In fact, regular listeners will remember I recorded a podcast with Rose, who did the Worcestershire Way in a day with the Malvern Walking Festival, setting off at Bewdley and finishing at opening time or thereabouts in Malvern. Right, I'm almost back on the Worcestershire Way now. That was a silly mistake to make. One of those things where you follow the signs and then only halfway down the slope you say, was it pointing forward or was it pointing off at 45 degrees? And it was pointing off at 45 degrees, but I blindly went forward. Anyway, getting back to the current situation, as I say, I'm back on the Worcestershire Way now. The Suckley Hills on the path that I've taken sort of consists of two little lumps, really. You've got the first lump that comes out of the village, and then you drop down, cross over the road, and you go through the orchards, the apple orchards that are there, and then all the trees have just got a few apples left on them, but they're basically completely without leaves and standing there like spiky little silhouettes waiting for winter to approach. Of course, the Suckley Valley all around this area used to be predominantly hop fields, acres and acres of hop fields. And the reason I know this is that some 25-30 years ago I was a youth chasing ladies of the species that used to live out this way, and it would be our income, fruit picking and hop picking, and you used to have gangs and gangs of students as well as travellers and the sort of hop picking fraternity, and they would work very, very hard during the day and then sink a good few pints at night, usually down at the Talbot Hotel as it happens. That was sort of the centre of everything. But now the landscape's changed. All the old hop fields are no longer left to go to rack and ruin, really. They don't seem to be cultivating anything else, which is a great shame. And all the hops that they were supplied, that they grew there, were supplied to Guinness, so I'm led to believe. So there's a little bit of useless history for you. Anyway, I'm now standing on Cruise Hill Wood, which is a nature reserve. So obviously I need to be careful what I'm doing here and not disturbing the flora and fauna too much. And we're on the parish boundary between Elfrick and Suckley. Anyway, so let's reflect on my current situation. My halfway point, as I say, was aiming for the Ankerdine Hill and the Talbot, but realistically it's not particularly conducive to wild camping there. There's a lot of properties and also just wrong sort of terrain. So I've pulled short my ambition to the end of this walk, which is just as the hills come to an end before it drops down to the road to go down to Nightwick, because there's another pub, the Fox at Lolsley, and what my cunning plan is to set up camp in the hills, and by that I mean just my tarp, because the forecast tonight is potentially a frost and rain, not really heavy rain, but rain at some stage during the next 12 hours. So I was going to pitch the tarp, get myself all ready as it were, and then nip down to the pub to have something to eat and a beverage just after it opens, and then nip back for what will be an early night and no doubt an early rise tomorrow. Of course, the whole principle is leave no trace and be virtually undetectable. So, as I say, it's now, what time is it? It's now 3:25, and light is certainly dropping rapidly. I really want to get to where I want to bed down by about 4 o'clock, because the light will drop very quickly, especially into this canopy of trees. And so it's more of a, It's more of a sort of a semi-bushcraft night really tonight, rather than a sort of a mountainous wild camp. We'll have some of those later. So what I'm looking for is a path off to the right, which I believe will lead down to the pub, and somewhere along that path I aim to get myself off the track, snuggle down underneath a tree somewhere and out of sight, and set up for the night, and then as I say, get my head down later on. Anyway, I'll tell you a bit more about what I'm doing shortly, once I've got myself sorted. Well, things have moved on a bit since my last pace. I've now ended up where I hoped to be, but it was just as I was recording that last piece and checking the map, I realised I'd had to get a yomp on. I was still a couple of K short of my intended arrival point, or where I wanted to bed down really, just before the end of the track on top of the Suckley Hills. And sure enough, I got here and the light has been changing very, very rapidly. And to give you an idea now, it is 4:45 and it's virtually pitch black. So I've managed to pitch the tarp, because I think there's going to be some rain tonight, but I was doing everything by feel. Sadly, I'm at an age now where as soon as dusk starts to hit, or the light drops, I need glasses, and there's nothing more frustrating than putting them on, taking them off, and so on, as anybody who wears glasses will, I'm sure, agree. So the positives was I was able to do all my knots by feel. All the tarp knots I'm pretty good at, and I can do them without actually having to have any light, which is great, because the last thing I want to do is put a head torch on and attract any attention where I'm currently sitting. Now, where am I sitting? Well, I suppose I'm about 20 feet off the main path. The main path follows the ridge of the trees, then dog's legs into a field, and I'm still in the trees, as it were. The tarp that I managed to pitch is a bit of a cobbled together sort of lean-to affair, and as I was putting it up, the wind, the breeze, the very, very slight breeze just was rippling it, so thankfully the angle of which I've pitched it is against the breeze. Now, the ground underfoot, as I described, is very, very wet, and a lot of leaf mulch in the ground, which obviously means the pegs aren't gripping particularly well. So I've tied it to all sorts of stumps of twigs and hazel trees and anything else that's lying around. I'm using my 2 walking poles as the way to keep the tarp upright, because I couldn't find any sticks. Now, talking of sticks, I did intend to... I brought the little Vargo folding stove with me, so I did intend to have a little bit of a... waste some time, really, with a little fire going and the Vargo stove providing some sort of warmth, even if it's just psychological. But I haven't had a chance to gather any wood. And so, although there is plenty of twigs around me, of course they've been lying on wet ground for some time and been in the rain, and consequently, as fibrous as they are quite wet. So as I literally just stare through a spaghetti of branches and brambles and things around me as I look up towards the sky, I am trying to see if I can find some air-dried twigs, because there's a lot of fallen trees and a lot of things still hanging from the trees which haven't touched the ground, which are dead. So if I can get a couple of handfuls of that, at least I can get a fire going later on. So let's just go and run through the positives and negatives, I guess. As I say, the positive is I've managed to pitch something. The ground, I've just checked the ground as best I can in this twilight with my hands. I can't feel any brambles, which is my biggest concern. Obviously, I don't want it to puncture my Rab Ascent bivvy, which I'm using today. So that's one with the waterproof base and the event upper. What was that? I'm about 200 metres away from a farm, a cattle farm, which is also the path that goes down to the pub. And I'm a little bit concerned that the dogs may come wandering out and find me if they're released during the night or during the evening, for a last minute visit of nature. And I thought that might have been a dog barking. I'm also about 20 metres away from a pheasant feeder, with plenty of grain in it, so I'm sure the pheasants will be around during the night making a racket. As I say, it's a fairly thick wood that I'm in, and I've had to walk around very, very gingerly in the area that I'm pitched up in, because there are a lot of hawthorn bushes and hawthorn sprigs sticking up at different angles, which are obviously not particularly conducive to expensive Gore-Tex and event fabric. As I say, it's only 4:45 now. I don't really want to set up, get myself any more comfortable, because I want to take the rucksack and all the contents with me down to the pub and have a beer down there and something to eat. I don't want to leave anything here apart from the tarp. And I've just got to be checking in the morning that I make sure I do manage to find all my lovely titanium pegs, which at the moment are holding ground. But as I say, there isn't much of a breeze, nothing at all, just the occasional leaf moving sort of higher up the tree. So not much to affect me from that point of view. So it really depends on whether it rains. I've looked up to see if there's any widowmakers, and I should be okay. The sort of trees I've been walking through have been mainly pine trees, so it's a planted forestry area. And obviously all this ground is probably, it's definitely privately owned. So I am actually trespassing. So it's even more importantly to leave absolutely no sign of being here whatsoever. What else have I seen today? Hazel trees, oak trees, beautiful oak tree on the way, but not many of them. And just a smattering of birch and that sort of thing. So, as I say, apart from the pheasant noises who've been making a fair racket, and the occasional dog walker, I've not really seen anybody for the last 4 or 5 hours. So, as I say, I'm just going to double check I've got everything bagged away now, and I might wander down to the pub. I'm not too sure what time it opens. It might be open all day if I'm lucky. If not, I'm going to be twiddling my thumbs for an hour, waiting to get in and get warm. Maybe I should talk about gear for a second. What have I brought with me? Well, I've got, as I say, the Rab Ascent bivvy. My sleeping mat is a Thermarest Pro Light Short, which will go inside the bivvy bag this time. The sleeping bag, I was hunting through my loft. As I said, I do have rather a lot of sleeping bags, which is a bit embarrassing. But I've got a Rab top bag, which was basically half an Ascent 400. So basically it's you've got all the down in the top part of the bag, and it's mummy shaped, but the bottom part of the bag is a Pertex sleeve or an island sleeve, so there's no insulation underneath, and the idea is that you slide your insulation mat into the slot. I won't be doing that this time, but I decided I'd use that this time round for a change. If I get cold during the night, I've got the Montane Pertex trousers, Primaloft trousers, the Prism pants, which are very, really useful for uprating. I've got a thick pair of socks, again, as I say, if it gets really cold. And I've also got the Rab generator smock, another Primaloft top. Now, you might ask, why have I brought Primaloft tops instead of my down? Well, because the bag is obviously down. If things go awry and too much moisture gets generated inside the sleeping bag and the down bag gets sodden, then the Primaloft will still keep me warm if I need to put it on. So that's in reserve, as it were. I've just got a bottle of water, a box with 2 or 3 Munchie bars and that sort of stuff in for the morning. And apart from a first aid kit and a toilet trowel, that is about it. But I can hear noises in the woods now, so I might just record a few of them as they happen, and I'll head down to the pub in a while, maybe pick up when I'm heading back, trying to find my spot in the dark. Oh, a final thing. I notice I can see road lights of cars passing in the distance, but there's no property lights at all. So apart from the farm, which is behind me, which where the tilt of the tarp is between the two of us, so it's shielding me, there really isn't any sign of life, which is good. So my only concern really is dogs, if they find me during either late at night walk or first thing in the morning. So I'll speak to you later.
Podcasting around the world. It's all about getting out and having much more fun.
This is the Outdoor Station.
Thanks very much, appreciate that. Cheers then, bye. Yeah, thanks. The Fox at Lulsley. Well, I arrived here to find out they didn't do any food on a day like today, but they very kindly rustled me up some chips and a cheese and pickle sandwich, which will do the job nicely. Right, so better head back up the steep climb up to the main path, suitably refreshed. My night vision, of course, now is completely gone thanks to that car going past and spending the last half hour or so in the pub. What are you got to be careful of when you go for a drink before, well, camping full stop, let alone wild camping, is that alcohol is a diuretic, which means that it makes you want to pee, which is why obviously after a few beers you get up in the middle of the night and need to go. The second thing is that it can lower the core temperature as well. So even though brandy and whiskey gives you that warm, lovely feeling, it actually is lowering your core body temperature. And finally, if you're drinking something cold like a cold beer or lager and stuff, then obviously that's lowering the core temperature as regards lowering the temperature in your bladder. So all in all, drinking alcohol is not really a sensible thing to do, but we all do it. And it's a case of being sensible with the volumes and the amount because obviously that reflects directly on your sleep. So, it's gone about, I think it's about 6:30, and it is pitch black. And I'm walking up this farm track which leads to the farmhouse, beyond which is the ridge walk, and tucked down from the ridge walk is of course my tarp at the moment. Just my tarp. I'm carrying everything else now. So what I ought to do is get to the farmhouse and tiptoe around it, because there are plenty of signs about beware of the dogs, without drawing attention to myself. And only when I get to my camp spot will I actually put my head torch on, and so I don't walk into all the hawthorn and bramble branches which are dotted around the place. So I'm going to stop for a second, switch the recorder off, and switch on when I'm back at the top. I've skirted round the farmhouse, no issues. As I say, I haven't used my head torch as yet, so it's all night vision. It's pitch black, but there's a fraction of light, just enough to... there's an owl, just enough to see what's going on. Just crossing a last field before getting into the wood. And the edge of the wood is where I'm pitched up. I managed to gather some twigs that were caught in the trees. There was plenty around me, so I just literally reached up until something fell out and gathered those. So I put those in the shelter. So in a minute, this is the muddy bit now. If that doesn't attract dogs, nothing will. Once I get myself sorted and in there, what I do need to do tonight is make sure everything is safe, tucked away. So if I do have to grab it and move for whatever reason, there's no chance of somebody coming around tonight, but it's always good to be ready for a quick exit, whether it's weather or circumstances. Right, I'm right by the bird feeder now, at the end of the path, and I've just got to go a few yards into the thicket there to see my tarp, which I can actually just make out. I suppose the one thing I could do with doing, reflecting on it was dark, as I say, getting towards dark when I was trying to pitch. And what I could have done is I had two bags, one with short cords in it and one with long cords in it, because I was just blind, really, reaching into a bag trying to find a cord that might be the right length to attach the tarp to either obviously a short distance or a long distance. Or, of course, the alternative is to have the cord already attached to the tarp and hanked, so that you just pull the tab. And I have to say, I'm really thankful I did hank all the cordage. So you just literally pull the two loose tabs and it unfolds for you straight away, which makes life an awful lot easier. So, as I say, there's no breeze. There's certainly no breeze at all. If there is a breeze, it is slightly away from the farmhouse, so that won't take my smells towards the dogs. In front of me, I've got a pretty steep drop straight down the side of this embankment for some distance, so I doubt if anybody's going to come up the embankment. And really, the only disturbance I anticipate during the night is wildlife, to be honest, especially, as I say, near a bird feeder. Certainly tomorrow morning I would expect to have a bit of a racket round here. So the next job is to get into the shelter, bit by bit, very, very carefully unpack, unroll the bivvy bag, get the mat inflated and inside the bivvy bag, get the sleeping bag done and the sleeping bag liner. So that's all ready in the bag and it's lying in okay. Just double checking once again for any sharp spikes, thorns or whatever. Last thing I want to do is have a puncture in the night or certainly a hole in the bivvy. And then I'll wriggle in and if circumstances allow it, I'll see if I can get a little fire going, perhaps have another chat. But in the meantime, I had a heck of a lot of emails. Thank you everybody from the last Wild Camp podcast. And so here's a few of them now and some of the comments that people wrote. Thanks for your emails and do keep them coming. It certainly looks like this Wild Camp series, challenge series, has grabbed the imagination of many, and I've had quite a few emails come through, all of which share interesting insights and thoughts and comments. So I'm going to go through a few of them now. There is a couple of pages worth, but bear with me. I think you'll find them of interest and hopefully inspire you to do exactly this. Have a bit of a wild camp, take a bit of an adventure, live in a bivvy bag. First is from David Lahunt. Hi Bob, just heard podcast number 377 and love your idea of a year of wild camping and would love to sample this with you. I've only wild camped twice so far, once on Dartmoor in the middle of summer with my son and a mate, and once on my own in a chillier night last November. Both were in a tent, but I've yet to try a tarp, even though I bought a DD Hammocks 3x3 tarp from you a couple of years ago. Living near Glastonbury, both Wales and Dartmoor are within easy reach for me. One other area I still want to go back to is the Peak District. Dean Reed does videos on his walking and camping trips there, and it looks excellent. It would make a change for you to travel east rather than west as well. How true, David? Okay, you're on the list. Bob, hi. I'm halfway through a 500-mile bivvy sleeping trip, walking from Munich to Paris, in the footsteps of film director Werner Herzog of 1974 and his famous walk. There are daily posts on my blog website, theslowadventure.com, and it might make an interesting lightweight podcast when I return and finish early December. All the best, Jasper Wynne. Jasper, as you might remember if you're a regular listener, was the guy that paddled around Ireland, which is a very amusing, enjoyable book, and there's a couple of podcast interviews with him as well back in the archives. One from Andrew Taylor. Afternoon, Bob. I've just been walking the dogs while listening to podcast number 377 and the 12 months of wild camping idea. It quickly became apparent that this was exactly like our challenge that we've been going on for the last 3 years. We have a forum going on bike packers, mainly in the UK, but some further afield. Our challenge is as an excuse to use all the ridiculously expensive bivvy kit we've amassed, and the only rules are to spend a night out wild camping at least once a month, just like you. Bivvies, bothies, hammocks, beer gardens, tents, bus stops and hedges are all fair game, but B&Bs, hostels and campsites are firmly out. Out of everybody that's taken part, there's only 2 men left standing, myself and friend Matthew. We both made 34 out of 34 months of wild camps through all sorts of dreadful weather, and I can see this going on for quite a while yet. Maybe come and join us for a cycle-based one sometime. That sounds good, doesn't it? One from Richard Welsh. Hi Bob, back to what you do best. I listened to this at work last night. Having missed your mini adventures, I do enjoy listening to these podcasts. My favourite being 3 Men in the Cairngorms, the Cape Wrath Trail, and of course your trips with Andy Howell. These inspired me to get out, and I have done some small adventures myself. This will be a great series to listen to and will get people's imagination working over time. Will be great with the added photographs, and the series progresses. Great sound quality, truly professional. Would be great to get all your team back together for an adventure again. Lee Wells, Tony Bow, Andy Howell. I can almost hear the banter already. Keep this going, Bob. I, for one, thoroughly enjoy listening to these productions, and it does inspire people to get out and enjoy the outdoors, which exactly is the point, Richard. Darren Holiday, great podcast, Bob. Perhaps you can arrange a night with Ronald Turnbull and combine the night wild camping with a bit of a catch-up, as it's been 6 years or so since your last interview with him. Stay tuned, Darren, stay tuned. Now, this one comes in from Finland. Timo, excuse the name, Kiravu?
Timo Kiravu from Finland. The term wild camping amuses me, as it sounds like normal camping we do here in Nordic countries. Our population density is less than in the British Isles, and our concept of land ownership focuses on the economic benefits of land, timber and agricultural products. The landowner does not have complete control over the land. Our everyman's rights differ a little bit between countries, but in my home country of Finland, I'm allowed to walk and ski on anybody's land as long as I don't disturb the crops or get too near habited houses. I can also pick berries and mushrooms and overnight on other people's land. Making a fire is not allowed without permission, thus we have the trangia and now a renewed interest in small wood-burning cookers. I live in Helsinki and I know a place is half an hour away where I can disappear and be alone easily. If you go to Lapland and avoid the most popular places like marked trails in national parks, you can hike for a week and are likely not to see anyone. And for the topic of the podcast, many people would like to try something new but are afraid. So if you do take a friend whom you think might like camping, it is a really nice thing to take them just like Rose did. Or once people have put up a tent, cooked a meal outdoors, slept one night, they have much more understanding of the concept and can progress on their own. But the first night might be quite an overwhelming step to cross alone. Timo, thanks for writing. Really interested. I thought you were going to invite me to Finland then for a second, but missed it at the last moment. A few short comments from Marion Parsons, of Mike Parsons, the originators of Kimlight. Mike and I will join you if you're up in the lakes. I bet you will. Mike Gillespie, I still got an ex-Army Gore-Tex bivvy I haven't used for a while. You've now given me notion to try it out again, possibly along with some kayaking. Esther of Warren and Esther, who've just cycled 4 years around the world. We're doing a series of overnights in the woodlands here in East Lothian. There are lots to choose from. Come on, Esther, we need to do a final podcast as well on that, returning home from that long cycle trip of yours. Gary Yelland, cool, I have a few wild camping podcasts. I love them. Jamie Waddington, great stuff. I'll be sure to give this a listen. I'm aiming to do one a month myself. Now, even the Outdoor Station European correspondent, Roman Ackel, has got in with some suggestions. How about doing a wild camp in Switzerland either before or after the outdoor show in July 2015 on the banks of Lake Constance? And you know what the Germans are like with their rules, Bob. Thanks for that, Roman. Ben Smith, read your blog about wild camping and would love to be added to the list of people who'd like to try it out with you. That's great. David Jones, I listened to this while doing the housework. It sounds like you had a good night. I must try a bivvy bag one day. Just come along, David. Rob Keane, I bivvied out last night on Kinder in the Peak District. Pretty wild weather. Really enjoyed it. Had yesterday and today off work, so I figured I should go and sleep out to blow some cobwebs off. It seemed like a good idea at the time from the warmth of my living room. So I would suggest that one of your sites is on top of Kinder Scout somewhere. I got settled in amongst the boulders. Not the best site, but I'd left it late and it was getting dark. Also, I would be happy to accompany you on another wild camp. Excellent. Andy Accourt, I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed going back through your backlist of podcasts. I especially enjoyed all the TGO challenges, 3 Men in the Cairngorms, and your latest wild camp pieces. I'm planning on doing the Cape Wrath next year with my 14-year-old son, and so have my eye on a Mariposa and a few other bits of equipment from you. And finally, are you planning to do another outdoor show so we can come and have a look and feel at the equipment next year? Yes, it's penciled in at the moment. Backpacking Light Outdoor Show, the 25th of April, I think. Okay, just the last couple now. Will... I walked the coast to coast this summer and wild camped most of the way in a bivvy bag and a backpacking light tarp. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but there's one thing that's put me off using the bivvy bag in future: slugs. I found that in some spots they were absolutely everywhere, and I woke up regularly with slime trails all across me. I really enjoyed using the bag when I can leave it open and fall asleep under the stars, knowing I can close it if it rains. But in some spots there were so many slugs around that I closed it from nightfall till morning for fear of getting one on my face. What are your thoughts on this? Do I just have to accept the slugs and deal with it, or is there a secret to not getting slimed? Tricky one, Will. I also had a pretty unpleasant one with a slug once where it woke me up one day just as it was crawling into my mouth. It was just coming on the side of my mouth here. And yeah, that was a feeling, so I had to get them all off. And yes, some days they're everywhere and sometimes they're not. There is such a thing as a beer trap, where you can get a jam jar and put some beer in it and they'll crawl into it and drown. Of course, alternatively, if you smelt of beer, I suppose that's a downside, just in case they think you're the beer trap. Or you can just man up, really, and just accept that's the way it is. I don't have a simple solution, I'm afraid, but I will ask the question of people who know. And talking of somebody who might know, I've got one here from Mr. Ronald Turnbull, the author of the Book of the Bivvy. Hello, Bob. I see that you're going to be giving me a call. I do have an idea or two for a bit of bivvy action, if falling asleep in a bag counts as action. Probably need a bit more daylight than there is at the moment, so could always go up Scarfell Pike with good moon. Could be the beginning of March, and I should be getting fit by then for, I think he means the TGO Challenge, not to mention the Everest ascent with Chris B. Is that Chris Bonington? I usually wait for some nice clear weather for the sake of some photographs, though foul weather makes for more interesting ascents and adventures. Indeed it does. Otherwise it could be late April, better weather, etc. All the best. Ronald, thank you very much for writing, and everybody else that's written. If anybody else wants to write, you know the address. Do drop me a line. Fascinated to hear if you want to join me or have me join you, or any suggestions and so on. Do keep them coming. I'm going to put all these names down on a list and try and tick them off as we go through next year. Anyway, back to this little mini adventure at Wild Camp Part 2, and we're slowly getting into it and bedding down for the night.
Well, that's the little Fargo hexagonal stove going. I don't want to have too high a heat because obviously it's slightly beneath the top. That doesn't make sense, does it? Turn this light off. So now I'm just lit by a little wood stove. In the Book of the Bivvy, Ronald says, and I think he's probably quite right, that actually if you sit up and cook in a bivvy, you actually lose more heat than you probably gain from the food that you're cooking, which I think is pretty true actually, unless obviously the weather's on your side and circumstances are, obviously very favourable. I think certainly from a winter perspective, he's probably quite right. But this little Fargo hexagonal folding stove is very sweet and doing really what I anticipated it doing, just giving me a nice little warm hearth, a glow of sentiment, if you like, a bit of emotion that makes the evening a little bit more pleasant. Just makes, you've got to be sensible to make sure obviously it doesn't put the wrong type of wood on there that spits, because the last thing you want is a little hole in your tarp or your bivvy bag or any of your other technical fabrics which happen to be too close to the fire. And the flames are a little bit too high, but it's just catching at the moment, so let those die down a bit. So I'm not too sure what activity we get tonight. I've already heard a fox barking. Whether it's calling for a mate or whatever, I don't know. There's certainly plenty of pheasants around. As I say, there's a pheasant feeder just a few yards from here. This bank is bound to be teeming with rabbits and such. So I would anticipate that come the hour or so before dawn, everything will kick off. I've taken off my boots. Once again, I forgot the plastic bag to put them in, but they're just sitting on the side here. Everything else is bagged up, as in bagged up next to my head or inside the rucksack, ready to go. I'm fully dressed, albeit from the boots, inside the bivvy bag, which is the Rab Ascent bivvy. I'm using the top bag, which is a bit like a quilt really, but it's got that sewn base to it, and because it's the Ascent bivvy, the sleeping mat is inside the bivvy bag, which of course is pinning me to the ground really. So that's me set, and I've got a little small sit mat, inflatable sit mat behind my head just so I've got a bit of manoeuvrability for pillow purposes. But I'm going to use the rucksack as a pillow and bed down. But I've just checked the watch and it's only 7:15. As I say, it's pitch black. I did feel a few spots of rain going down to the pub, and the rain is forecast about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. So we'll see if the shelter holds up, and hopefully there's no wind, just rain will be fine. But everything's tucked in the corner, out of the way of the weather, so no matter what happens, we should be sorted. So that's pretty well me set in for the night. I'm nice and toasty, I must admit, probably too hot actually. As I say, supposedly there's a frost tomorrow, so we'll see how we juggle with our clothing during the night. And obviously if I hear some wildlife or whatever, I'll switch back on and you can share that with me. So I'll just watch this fire die down and get my head down. So good night everybody, I'll catch you later. Well, it's 3 a.m. now, and I haven't been any great dramas, but the wind has picked up and rotated, so the wind is now coming virtually right into the lean-to shelter. It's not particularly strong, but things are flapping a bit, as you can hear. The thing about sleeping wild, I suppose, is all the unfamiliar noises that you hear, and those are the things that wake you up all the time. Odd clinks and leaves scattering and landing on the bivvy bag or on the roof or whatever else, as well as the distant animals. Nothing, as far as I know, has come close, but I certainly heard a fair amount of activity last night, particularly as I was dropping off, but nothing since. As I say, 3 a.m. It's the next 3 hours really as dawn starts to arrive that I anticipate a little bit more activity. But fairly warm and toasty in the clothing that I said. In fact, I've taken my jacket off, but in the process of actually getting this recorder out and recording, I've now lost a lot of heat out the bivvy bag because I've had to open everything up to release my hands. So sadly nothing exciting, but thankfully as well. I'll come back to you at dawn. Well, we've had our first bit of drama. I know you like to hear about drama. Shortly after I recorded the last piece at 3ish, there was a couple of almighty gusts, and the wind took the pegs out of the ground. The few pegs that I used to hold it down into this mulch. As you can imagine, obviously there wasn't much of a grip anyway, so I had to retrieve the pegs, and then it was a decision to make whether to take the tarp down or try and reconfigure it. And to be honest, getting out of bed and sorting it out, I decided to take it all down. So I've taken the tarp down, rammed it in the rucksack in the gorilla, covered everything up just in case it rains, as well what was predicted earlier on, but it hasn't yet, and the wind has been gusting ever since, quite heavily. But I'm quite toasty actually inside the bivvy. Everything's prepared, as I say, tucked out of the way. The only thing I do regret is not having the plastic bag for my boots. They're stuck out at the moment, but they're ready to in a position where I can grab them and stick them on straight away. It's 5ish now, and I'm just starting to see the first light rays of dawn creeping in the horizon, and looking up now I can stare up straight up through the tree canopy and just start to see the sky change colour, but it looks very, very cloudy again, low cloud, so I'm not expecting a spectacular sunrise, but I'm quite happily dozing here really, just slowly being covered and buried by leaves which are blowing around the place. So that's my drama news, and I think I'll pick up a bit later on, hopefully without any more drama. Sunrise is just taking place in a very half-hearted attempt to cheer up the world. at 7:30 over the top of the Suckley Hills. And there's a few streaks, but the cloud's so low that it's damping down its enthusiasm to shine its light upon us. And I've picked myself up and started to head back down the trail, obviously making sure no trace. In fact, I slept really well for the last few hours in just the bivvy bag, not listening to anything flapping or blowing in the wind, so perhaps it was a good thing. I felt like I was doing a proper Ronald Turnbull moment. I've approached these wild camps from a newcomer's point of view, really, trying to make it simple and less scary. The last time being obviously in the perimeter of our village or our town on the Malvern Hills, which is convenient, and now the Worcestershire Way, which walks away from the Malvern Hills. I've shared a lot of the things, the pros and cons so far, but I think the two key things that I've learned, or reminded myself of, shall we say, is to make sure you get to your chosen site early enough to set up a decent camp and overcome any problems or obstacles that you might foresee, such as wind direction changing and circumstances. And the second thing is, should the wind direction change or anything else like that, you've got to be prepared to be flexible. So that doesn't mean sleeping on a knife's edge all night long, but it does mean, as in my case, the wind reversed, lifted the shelter up and started to ping all the pegs out. It's either a case I could ignore it and have the flapping all night long, or I could deal with it. Of course, the next wild camp is in December, and I've managed to persuade Andy to join me for another Bob and Andy's big day out. We've had thousands and thousands of people listen to the podcast of, I think it was a couple of years ago, when we did our Christmas trip, and so I think it's only fair we should do the Return of the Santa with another wild camp, and making major efforts to make a wild camp interesting with some kind of cooking sensation, a lot of banter and mickey taking, and the practicalities of probably holding a shelter or a tent down during winter weather. So please do join us for the December issue. I hope you've enjoyed this one. As I've said before, and I'm sure we'll say many times again, do drop us a line and with your thoughts, and if you have any suggestions for wild camps over the next few months. As you can see, we've already had quite a few come in, so keep those emails coming to info@theoutdoorstation.co.uk. So in the meantime, dawn is upon us. I can now see more than a few feet in front of me, and I'm heading back to sunny Malvernshire to unpack and have a nice breakfast, I think. So have a good day, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed it, and join us for our next wild camp in about 4 or 5 weeks' time before Christmas.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear more from our extensive free library, please visit the website at theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
You can now follow The Outdoor Station on Facebook, where we chat about each programme we produce, answer questions and discuss future productions. Why not join us there?
This podcast is produced and hosted by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.